the right to vote. And joining us now to talk more about this is Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn, joining us from her car, and also with us the senator's daughter, Mary Morgan Blackburn Ketchel, to talk about the book, Camilla Can Vote. Ladies, thanks for joining us. It's great to talk to both of you.
Oh, it's so good to be with you.
Okay, well, let's start with you, Senator Blackburn. You know, were you surprised at all? I know you've been dealing with this issue a lot, and Republicans and Senator, your colleague Josh Hawley has been looking at this specifically. When Instagram banned the promotion of this book, saying it would influence the outcome of the election.
Oh, yes, I was. This is a history book for children, and it was really surprising that they would label it political content, think it was going to influence the outcome of an election. And not only did they do it once or twice or 3 times, but now they have blocked the promotion of this book 4 different times. And it just goes to show you, if you're a conservative and your name is attached to it, then they are going to give it a different set of scrutiny than they do for others.
Yeah, you know, one of the things too that I think is important to remind all, and I remind my daughter about this all the time, is that the 19th Amendment, of course, came after Mary Morgan, the 14th Amendment, which granted all men in this country the right to vote, and women, of course, were left out of that. It came much later. But talk to us about this book and who was really behind the women's suffrage movement.
Yes, that's right. The movement for women's suffrage began in 1848 in Seneca Falls, New York, and many of those women that were part of the first group had also worked with Frederick Douglass and were abolitionists. They took on the organization of the get-go of the women's right to vote, the big push, and organized themselves as suffs and suffragists, and that played out all the way to 1920, August 18th to be exact, with the culmination of the ratification of the 19th Amendment in Nashville, Tennessee. And the suffragists and the suffragist clubs were all gathered in Nashville, Tennessee at the Hermitage Hotel. And that day, there was a 48-48 tie in the state legislature. And the irony of it is, and the fun about the book is, you get to watch as the youngest member of the legislature goes to the state capitol, changes his vote after receiving a letter from his mother that was sent urging him to change his vote and help Miss Cat put the rat in ratification. That was a letter sent by a lady known as Miss Febb, just in the nick of time, got to her son, went in, changed his vote, and made history for all American women at that point. So 1848 started out 72-year fight, culminating in Nashville, Tennessee in 1920.
Yeah, it's so important to remind, I think, especially young women and girls nowadays, that this, right to vote didn't always exist for everybody. We hear so much now about the importance of voting in this election. But again, we see the situation, Senator Blackburn, we've had this Twitter and social media censorship. Just today, Twitter announcing that it was temporarily suspending Donald Trump Jr.'s account for allegedly spreading misinformation on hydroxychloroquine. But you don't hear about this happening to people on the left, do you?
Well, it seems as if the censorship is more pointed to the right. That is for sure. I mean, you look at this with a children's book and you see it. Of course, yesterday with Don Jr. talking about hydroxychloroquine, and I was talking to a physician last night, and they said, we've used hydroxychloroquine and zinc for years, and these are things that in many countries are sold over the counter. But what we have is, it doesn't fit the narrative of some physicians or of the left, and so they're trying to block it. So what do? They censor Don Jr.
Right, and what this does is really flaunts and throws in your face, legislators' face, this law, the Communication Decency Act, where they're not supposed to be picking and choosing the content they put up there. And I think, again, it shows us that they've outgrown this, and you guys need to get involved. The other thing, too, we want to talk about real quickly is this whole issue. We got Ted Yoho coming up here, Senator Blackburn, on our show, and he's going to talk about this dust-up with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and we thought this was important. Some people, including the New York Post, Miranda Devine, says what AOC doing is faking outrage here. Do you think that's the case?
Well, what we know is that the left is going to use all means possible to try to throw different things at Republicans and at President Trump. They have, see, here's what it goes back to is
30 seconds, Senator.
They never accepted the election results from 2016. So whether it is Russia, whether it is mob rule, whether it is impeachment, there are going to be so many avenues they're going to try to do things to discredit members of the Republican Party, and we know that.
Well, that's why it's important we all vote, so we don't let them get too much power here. I want to mention the new book, Camilla Can Vote, out now. Ladies, thank you so much for your time. Senator Marsha Blackburn, thank you so much, and your daughter, Mary Morgan Ketchel. We'll be right back after this.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing news channel, now in 65 million homes. Get Newsmax TV on all the major cable systems or go to newsmaxtv.com and click on the Find Newsmax tab to locate us. Remember, Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.